So now let's talk about this second report that we need to build for the assignment, which is the approver trip inquiry. And just like the first report, this is also a pivot table report. You can see that we need to have the approver name on the report filter. We need to have the employee name and the job title as the row labels. And for each employee name, for each employee, aside from their job title, we need to display the number of business trips they've taken, the length of time that they were away on business trips, and the total amount they've spent. And we want to filter our results by the approver. So we just want to see trips approved by specific approvers, or we can select all if we don't want to filter by approver. So we need to make sure that we have all the data we need before we start building the pivot table. So let's switch back to our data source. So our data source is over here. That's Q4 trips. So let's see if we have everything we need. So, okay, when you were given the worksheet, okay, you only head up to column J here. And as you can see, I've added a number of columns here, and that's because I'm going to need them for the approver trip inquiry form. So here I've added a column called total amount, which is simply the sum of airfare, meals, and hotel, because we're going to need it in that report. I also have the length of the business trip, okay, because we're going to need it in that report as well. So the formula is equal D2 minus C2 for this particular trip, because D2 is the end date and C2 is the start date of the report. Okay, so I can see that for this particular business trip, it was 3 days long. The name of the employee who went on this trip and the approver who approved this trip. How did I fill this in? Well, we have the employee ID here, the employee who took the business trip. So I use VLOOKUP. Okay, I looked up B2, which has the employee ID. I looked it up in this table array. And if I find a match, the employee name is on the third column of that table array. And I want an exact match, so I put false here. And if you want to see where my staff info refers to, my staff info is this table. Okay, this table which is in the staff worksheet. Okay, and if you want to see where your defined names are, you can go to formula. There's a name manager there. Okay, and you see I can have a staff info here. Okay, and staff info refers to A1 colon D23 of the staff worksheet. Okay, now in fact I'm going to edit that one because I have a column E here which shows the department that the employee belongs to. So, just to be more complete, I'm going to switch that to E. Okay, all right. Okay, and it doesn't affect the results. The results are still the same. Okay, and then I use VLOOKUP also on approver name, but this time the results, the matching, the answer, the approver name is on column 4. And I also use VLOOKUP to look up the job title in column 2 of the staff info table. Okay, so now that I have everything I need, I can proceed with my pivot table report. So I click in my data source and I go insert, pivot table, and I automatically have the range entered here. So I just say new worksheet, click OK. All right, so from our sample format, you know that you need the approver name. So you have to put approver name. I can just click it here and drag it to the filters. So now I have the filter there. And then I can click employee name and drag it to the rows. So now I have the employee name here. And then I can click job title and also drag it to the rows under employee name. Okay, so now it shows up here indented under the employee name. But again, if I switch to design and I go report layout and I show in tabular form, then it's going to show up here next to it. And I also need the number of trips, total days, and total amount spent. So for the number of trips, I can use trip ID. I can drag it to the values. Okay, and when I drag it to the values, you'll see that Excel automatically adds the trip ID because it's a number. But we don't really want to sum the trip ID. We just simply want to count it because we just want to know how many trips the employee took. So I can right click here, and then you'll see here summarize values. We can change the function used to summarize it into count. And now it simply counts the business trips. All right. And then we have the number of days. So I take the number of days. Okay. So for this one, it sums, and that's correct. And then the total amount spent. Right. And again, I can change the names of the columns to match what I have here. So here, double click, number of trips, total days, and this is total amount. Okay. Um, I guess this name has been taken, so I'm just going to say total amount spent. All right. Okay. So now this is looking good, except you can see that we have a total for each employee, a total line here, but we don't really need the total because we just have one line per employee. So how can we remove the total? So up here, we have again, analyze and design. These are additional menu tabs that show up when you click on the pivot table. If you go to design, you will see here something called subtotals, and we can actually click do not show subtotals. Okay, and that way it's much cleaner. We don't really need to see the subtotals because there's only one detail line per employee. Okay, and we can also format the total amount spent here with comma style. All right, and now let's test our filter. So let's say I just want to see trips approved by Bob Lee. Then I will only see trips approved by Bob Lee and trips approved by Charles Falk. Okay, so that's our second report, and the name of this report is Approver Trip Inquiry. So I'll change the sheet name, and we can also add report titles here. Right click and insert, merge and center. Again, we can pick a nicer color scheme later, but this is just to demonstrate how to build that report.